He won the war, 10 years of fighting, the greatest war in the ancient world. Troy burned to the ground, and when it was over, when the smoke finally cleared and the soldiers finally turned toward home, he was the last one left. Not because he died, because the gods decided his journey home was going to take another 10 years. 20 years away from home, one man, one ship, the entire wrath of a god, and a wife at home who refused to believe he was dead. This is the Odyssey. And before this is over, I am going to tell you what happens when Odysseus finally walks through his own front door after 20 years. It is not what you expect. The war at Troy ends with the wooden horse, Odysseus's idea. They hollow out a giant illustrated horse, fill it with Greek soldiers, leave it outside the illustrated city walls as a supposed gift. The Trojans drag it inside. In the middle of the illustrated night, the soldiers climb out, open the gates, and Troy falls. Odysseus should have sailed home that night. He didn't. He made a mistake. A bad one. He and his men sacked a nearby island, the Ciconians, killing the men, taking the women, taking the wine, and they celebrated too long. By morning, the Ciconian reinforcements arrived. 6 men from every Greek were killed. The gods were watching, and Poseidon, god of the sea, was already angry. The first great test. Odysseus and his men land on an island. They find a cave filled with illustrated cheese, illustrated lambs, illustrated barrels of milk. They eat. They wait for the owner. The owner comes home. Polyphemus, son of Poseidon, a Cyclops. He seals the cave with a boulder no 20 men could move, and he eats 2 of Odysseus's men. Right there, Odysseus has a plan. He finds the Cyclops' enormous illustrated club, a tree trunk basically, and sharpens the end, hides it in the illustrated cave floor debris. The next night, he offers Polyphemus wine, keeps the illustrated cup coming. The Cyclops asks his name. Odysseus says, "Nobody." When Polyphemus falls into a drunk illustrated stupor, Odysseus and his men drive the sharpened illustrated stake into the Cyclops' one eye. The Cyclops screams. The neighboring Cyclopes come running, ask who hurt him. Polyphemus screams, "Nobody, nobody hurt me," and they walk away. The next morning, Odysseus and his men escape under the illustrated bellies of the Cyclops' sheep, clinging to the illustrated wool as Polyphemus lets them out to graze, feeling only the illustrated animals' backs. They make it to the ship, and then Odysseus does something catastrophically stupid. He shouts his real name back at the Cyclops. "It was me, Odysseus, son of Laertes, from Ithaca." Polyphemus calls on his father Poseidon, curses Odysseus by name. From this moment, the sea god is personally hunting him. They reach the island of AEAEA. Half the crew goes to explore. They find a palace. A woman singing inside, Circe, a goddess and a sorceress. She invites them in, gives them food, gives them wine, and then touches them with her illustrated wand. They become pigs. Odysseus goes looking for his men, meets the god Hermes on the road, who gives him a magical herb that protects him from Circe's illustrated magic. He enters, eats her food, drinks her wine. Nothing happens. Circe is impressed. They become lovers. She turns his men back. They stay for a year, a whole year. Eventually, Circe tells him the truth. To get home, he has to first go somewhere no living person has gone. He has to go to the underworld. Odysseus sails to the edge of the illustrated world, digs a trench, fills it with illustrated blood. The blood attracts the illustrated dead, gives them temporary illustrated consciousness, lets them speak. He speaks to Tiresias, the blind prophet, who tells him how to get home, tells him what to avoid. He speaks to his dead mother, finds out she died of grief while he was away. He tries to embrace her. His arms pass through 3 times. He speaks to the illustrated great heroes, Achilles, Agamemnon, and what Achilles tells him is one of the most devastating lines in all of ancient literature: "Do not try to make death seem fine. I would rather be a slave among the living than king of all the dead." The man who chose a short, glorious life over a long, ordinary one, standing in the underworld, wishing he had chosen differently. 2 monsters, 1 passage. On one side, Charybdis, a whirlpool that swallows entire ships 3 times a day. No one survives it. On the other, 6 heads, 6 mouths. She eats 6 sailors with every pass. Circe told Odysseus the truth. Hug Scylla's side. You will lose 6 men. Guaranteed. But you will save the rest. He watches 6 of his men get eaten. He made the right call. He hates himself for it. The sirens are creatures, part illustrated woman, part illustrated bird in the original Greek, who sing from their illustrated island. Their song is irresistible. Every sailor who hears it rows toward them and crashes on the illustrated rocks. The illustrated shore around their island is covered in the illustrated bones of men who could not stop listening. Odysseus wants to hear them, so he has his men fill their illustrated ears with illustrated beeswax. Then he has them tie him to the illustrated mast. Orders, whatever I say, whatever I beg, whatever I command, do not untie me. The sirens sing. He screams at his men to let him go. He begs, he orders, he promises. They row harder. Until the song fades, he is the only man in history to hear the sirens and survive. The goddess Calypso finds Odysseus shipwrecked on her island. She falls in love with him, offers him immortality, eternal youth, paradise forever. He says no. Every day for 7 years, he sits on the illustrated shore and cries. He wants to go home, not to paradise, not to immortality, home. Eventually, the gods intervene. Hermes orders Calypso to let him go. She builds him a raft with gritted illustrated teeth, and he sails. Poseidon finds him, destroys the raft with a storm. Odysseus nearly drowns, washes up on the island of the Phaeacians, who give him a ship. He arrives at Ithaca in disguise, because of course he does. Because his house is full of men. 108 suitors have been living in his home for years, eating his food, drinking his wine, all of them trying to marry his wife Penelope, because if she remarries, Ithaca is theirs. Penelope has been holding them off with a trick. She told them she would choose a husband when she finished weaving a burial shroud for Odysseus' father. Every night, she unravels what she wove during the day. 3 years of this, she refused to believe he was dead. Penelope announces a contest. Whoever can string Odysseus' great bow and shoot an arrow through 12 axe handles, she will marry. One by one the suitors try. Not one of them can even string it. The beggar in the corner, Odysseus in disguise, asks for a turn. The suitors laugh. Penelope says let him try. He strings it. Without effort, he reveals himself. And then, he and his son Telemachus and 2 loyal servants, 4 against 108, lock the doors. The gods are with him. Every arrow finds its mark. Not one suitor leaves that room alive. And then, the moment the entire poem has been building toward, Penelope and Odysseus face each other for the first time in 20 years. She doesn't run to him. She doesn't believe it immediately. She tests him. She tells a servant, "Move the bed out of the bridal chamber. Make it up for this man." Odysseus' reaction is immediate and outraged. He says, "You cannot move that bed. I built it myself around a living olive tree. Its roots go into the earth. It cannot be moved. It is the foundation of this house, unless someone has cut the tree." Only Odysseus knew about the bed. She runs to him, and Homer, 3,000 years ago, describes her relief as a sailor who finally sees land after a terrible storm. He wrote the reunion from her perspective, not his. The poet understood. 20 years of waiting is its own kind of Odyssey. The Odyssey is not really a story about a hero. It is a story about what it costs to find your way home. About a man who had every reason to give up. Immortality offered, paradise offered, comfort offered, and chose a difficult life in a real place with a real person over a perfect illustrated life in a beautiful trap. And about a woman who chose to believe for 20 years in something she could not prove. That is why we are still telling the story, 3,000 years later.